Oh. Morning, guys and girls. Well, was just a hair mark above the Z this morning when I got up, and it's about 10:30, and it's still about 3 degrees. I left my bait bucket in the pickup, so I'm going to let that thaw out. The sun has come out, and that's definitely helping quite a bit. But cold mornings, I stoke up the fire in the shop, and that's what these rifles are for. It gives me something to do while it's warming up, and then I'll head out there and try to get, I wanted to get about, a few more traps in. Anyway, I got this, I got the tang fitted to the breech plug, and I got the tang also inletted, so the barrel, the breech plug, the tang is all inletted, and it's where it's supposed to be right now. And it come out real good. I'll here, let me bring it over there and let you see. Oh, heavy in the front. So the fit's good all the way around the tang. I worry about this seam right here, and this one come out good and tight, and the barrel's level. So we're ready for next work. We're going to do is set this lock in place. So I'll turn it this way. The way I've been doing these lately is I take the lock apart and I set this is cut out rough. It's not, you know, it needs some work. It is, and that's the shape of the lock plate. The depths are close, but they're not, a lot of wood's got to come out of there. So what I do is I take the lock apart and I get the plate where I want it first. Then I start putting parts on using my bottled lamp black, and then I keep fitting it until I get all those high spots in there out of, you know, cut down where everything works good. And then the lock's back together, and then I can work on the trigger plate. So I'm going to work on the lock today, give that sun a little time to work on the air, and then maybe the next video you'll see me out there on the line putting in some traps in colder than hell weather. So anyway, stick with me on this and see how this turns out. So first thing I take off is the hammer. Boy, L&R really screwed the pooch on this. You could see they jammed this on there. It was really tough to get off without prying. And when you pry, you get little scratches. Fortunately, most of them are under the hammer. But I'll get a little file and I'll clean this out really good. I don't want to fight this hammer every time I take it off. I'll put a better fit on it. So that's first come off. And then we have, where does it go? Mainspring vise. And that goes on here. And that'll get that loose enough. That'll come off of there. Oh yeah. So we have the camera rolling, so naturally it's going to fight. Connecting piece on how it went in. That's the smaller little hoop goes to the sear, the top, and the big hoop goes to the spring. I have this little magnetic tray, and that's really helpful. Really helpful with the small parts. Keeps them all in one place. Next thing I'll take off is the sear return spring, and it should pop right out of there. Always keep this stuff, spring stuff, away from your face, because if it decides to go into orbit, it doesn't go into orbit into your eye. Okay, now we got to get this saddle off. So now there's a little fly in here, and it's best to take note how it's in there. And what I do is I unscrew the saddle and the sear, and I just leave that all together. And I don't pull it apart unless I have to. But I do know this little fly has to have the angle, the point going down, and the angle on the right side. So I'll put that all back together. If you're working on these guns a lot and you're taking them apart, don't ever take this apart in the field because you'll lose that fly. So now I have a trigger plate that I can start to inlet. Oh, set that right there. It's not a bad idea to have a couple of them flies. So before I start taking any wood off, this one's pretty tight. I want to see how this fits with this, and then this edge fits against the wood. I don't want to take anything off, and to me it looks like it would be better to take wood off of the top edge here so that this will go in up against that breech plug and tang snail area there. So that's where we're going to start. Back and forth, it's looking pretty good. I just got to take a little off the back and a little off of this side. Got it flat, and it's actually in pretty good. This gap's a little bigger. The only way you can avoid having a bigger gap right here is getting a straight. This one, the half circle was already cut when I got it on the lock. A lot of times what I like to do is just get one that hasn't been cut, and then once I set everything I can cut it, and I can usually get a little closer than that. That's not going to hurt anything. It's an appearance thing. It looks better if it's tighter. So probably should have ordered an uncut one and cut this out myself. It would have been a little tighter, but this is going to go good. Now what we got to do is lower the shelf. This thing is perfectly level with this part of the side plate, but I want it a little bit below the wood so we can work the wood down, and that'll close this gap between the top of this and the barrel. So that's what we're working on next. I have to put a little lamp black on it. Geez, at least 3/32 deeper than the edge of the wood, so that gives me a lot to play with. I like using a piece of old ramrod to get all the corners down flat. And that'll be about as far down as it's going to go because this edge here is flat up against the barrel. And it's nice and clean all the way around. It's going to turn out nice tight fit. Now we just sand it a little bit and smooth all the edges and start putting the back of the lock together and setting it in and getting it, cleaning out the wood that's in the way of the workings and keeping it going down to this level. It's going to be just right. So another thing that I was conscious of as I was fitting the barrel, the tang, and the lock plate is this guy. Now this is just a rough estimate, but it looks like that hammer is going to come right down on the nipple and it's going to miss the back of the snail. So something to be conscious of, otherwise you end up bending heating and bending hammers. Just a little light chisel work over here. Sometimes the chips that I pull out, they almost don't They're almost not big enough to think they'd make any difference, but I don't want to have to pry this thing out every time I take it apart, so very, very light chisel marks on the black spots will help it fit a little bit. It'll still look tight, and it'll still be a tight fit, but it'll come out in and out easier. And I try to work below this surface, and that's another thing that's nice about having the lock plate a good distance into the wood. If you do nick this edge with your tool, which does happen quite often, when you sand it down, it'll take that nick out, and it'll be a nice straight edge. It's kind of my little fail-safe. And but it's sitting flat. I've got a lot of good contact here, so I just need to smooth it out with some sandpaper now. Oh, there's one little high spot right there that's got to go, right on that bend. There. Okay, I put the saddle back on and the trigger. The top of this saddle right here cuts into the ledge that this plate sets on, or else it just won't go in there. But I got it in there now and it's snapping down good, so time to start put another part on. The thing that I had to take out quite a bit of wood, get that to sit flat. The thing that takes out the most amount of wood is the spring. So we'll put that on next. Okay, so all the parts are on now, and it's fitting loose, and I've got this fitting a little bit better. You see it fell off, and it won't rest real good in there until the stock is trimmed, because this sits deeper. One of the things to watch for is this guy. It's always too long, and unless you cut this, so you got to trim it down. I've trimmed it down to where this is all sitting flat in there now, and it'll operate, and everything's pretty loose and easy to get in and out. So as far as I'm concerned right now, this is done good enough. As we go on, see, it comes out pretty good, but as I go on, all these parts, as I get further on in building this, all these parts are cast and they're very rough. And so when I take this apart again to polish off the surface of the lock, I will polish all these rough cast parts down, especially the trigger parts, and it'll come out to have a better trigger because they'll be smooth against smooth and polished against polished and not rough against rough. So there we go. And that, like I say, it's popping in and out of there pretty easy. And I got this thing to where it's got to where this is working, so it'll caulk. Everything's good. Well guys, that's it for this update. Got some other work to do in the shop, so that's done. Next will be the trigger plate, and we'll start screwing things together. I'll keep you updated as things progress with this rifle. I'm kind of excited with it. It's going to be a fun gun to shoot, and should be a good gun for larger critters like elk and such. Anyway, thanks for joining me for this update, and we'll catch you next time. I'm Buckskin Dave, and you guys have a great day. Thanks for stopping in. Bye-bye.